Well, welcome everyone. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Mark Stein, the Chief Scientific Officer at Maxis Health. And we're going to be talking about emotional regulation, how families and clinicians can deal with that and support their children throughout their different experiences. So first of all, one of the areas that we wanted to talk about today, Doctor, is temperament, risk factors, and individual differences. So can we set that up by just talking about what is temperament? What does that term mean, and how it lays the groundwork for emotional regulation?
Sure. Well, temperament it's kind of like a child's personality. We think that children are kind of born with different temperaments. I mean, any parent that has two children will be able to immediately tell you that the differences between their first child and their second child. Um, and when we think of temperament, I mean, there are different types of temperament. There are like, kind of easy temperaments. There are some kids that are just more variable in terms of how they respond and more intense. And there are some that I have a more difficult temperament. They're difficult to soothe. And parents can tell you, like at day one, they observe these differences in children and their temperaments. And again, the point is that people kind of start off differently. And then based on their temperament and how that interacts with their environment, they could be at risk for certain things or not and be protected for certain conditions. So it's just a way to sort of describe differences between children at the beginning. And we believe that most of these are inherited, that again, they kind of start off with these specific temperaments.
Okay. So, and you mentioned risks. Are there early warning signs of risks that we should be aware of?
Well, I guess it's helpful to kind of think about, kind of like the causes and then the outcomes. So if you have a child that has, for example, an easy temperament, you're a lucky parent. You can be more
Sure.
relaxed. You're not worried about, the infant screaming excessively or being difficult to soothe. On the other hand, if you have a child that is, easily upset, maybe resistant to getting certain feedback or praise or inconsistent. That's really stressful to the parent and to parenting. And
Sure.
then, being a parent doesn't come with an owner's manual. And many of the parenting advice is kind of general, like do this for this child. But that may not be the right advice for this child that has either, say, a difficult temperament or a temperament, for example, that might be slow to warm up. There are some children, for example, that are really quiet and reserved at first, and they run the risk of, being kind of understimulated or under the radar. So again, so looking at where the child is in terms of their temperament and where things begin, and the relationship of that, to the parenting and parenting style. And then we also know that, certain environmental stressors can impact
Mhm.
children's development. So children that are exposed to more, for example, stressful events or we call them adverse childhood experiences. Both the psychological and the physical environment, impact children as they develop. And we think this is what contributes to some of the differences that we see between children.
And how does that understanding help change the way parents and doctors, physicians approach those behavioral challenges?
Well, I think it's important to not to focus on the child and how they interact with the environment and how they interact with their parents and others. And some of it the child brings to the table, but then there are these other characteristics, some of which can be modified, could be protective factors, and some of which might be risk factors. So, kind of helping parents to identify, what is the best combination to help a child develop into a happy, healthy, productive person.
Person. That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about emotional dysregulation and the development stages. Are there
Sure.
key milestones that we can be recognizing as a child goes through sort of like preschool into adolescence?
Yeah. Well, Monique, I think it's important to think about emotion regulation as sort of a developmental process that children go through, and that children they don't have that skill at day one, and in fact, they have very little emotion regulatory abilities. But as they develop, it gets better and better. Um, so we want to distinguish between emotion regulation, which is kind of developmental process, and dysregulation, which kind of infers that there's something wrong. And they're two different processes, and they're
Okay.
important to differentiate. So, and again, in terms of emotion regulation, it's in parallel to other areas of development, like learning, for example, self-control, or emotional control, behavioral control, physical control. All those things sort of start off at low levels, and then over time, children develop better control over those things. So that's emotion regulation. Dysregulation, think about it as like a thermostat that automatically regulates within a certain range the temperature. You can set it for a certain point. Um, if we think of emotion regulation, we think of it's going to change based upon different stimuli. When you're upset, you become emotional, or things don't go as expected. But then they bounce back when things are within the normal range. But dysregulation is when the thermostat isn't working right. You might have a stimulus that's relatively minor that upsets somebody, or something major like a major threat that goes undetected. So we want to pay attention to both the development of emotion regulation, and we want to make sure that the process of the regulatory process for dysregulation is generally in the normal range. And I guess you asked me about milestones. So I guess I always think about 2-year-olds and think about behavioral control in 2-year-olds, like the temper tantrums, which have their peak at age 2. And then over time, in most children, they decrease as they get older. And certainly by the time they're in kindergarten or in elementary school, you see fewer tantrums or behavioral outbursts. But anytime that we see those developmental trends not going the way that, either maintaining or getting worse, that would be a warning sign. But
Okay.
certainly it's very common for children to have behavioral outbursts, to have tantrum-like behaviors. All children have those at certain times, and adults have them at certain times.
Mhm.
But the regulatory mechanisms in adults, in generally have much better control than children. And then in young children, we always think of like adults as assisting them in sort of developing those mechanisms. And that's what adults do, is they give feedback to children about what appropriate behavior is and what inappropriate behaviors. And the parents are really teachers in developing self-control.
Are there any strategies that you can share for parents who are trying to set that stage and sort of create that environment of support and encouraging and helping the child to learn about their emotions and how they can deal with them?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing for parents as a strategy is to kind of sit back and relax and not feel like they're going to make a mistake and then they're going to doom their child to years of psychotherapy and other stress, because this is a developing process and it takes place over years and multiple experiences. And most of the time they'll get it right and it will be positive. But besides, kind of relaxing, I think they want to think of themselves really as a teacher, and think of their experiences when they were a child and learning things, and what really goes into being a good teacher. Being enthusiastic, being positive, um, being a good model. And then the overall strategies for parents is to think about when a child has an outburst to try to understand, what is happening? What are the antecedents, or what are the things that start it going? What is it? Is it the situation? Is it the time of day? Is it the child's physiological state? So really thinking the setting and what's going on beforehand, and then what's going on afterward. Is it short-lived? Is it longer than it should be? And what is the outcome? What does the child take away from that? What does the parent take away from that? And then use that information next time to plan both what are the factors that they can do ahead of time to prevent significant emotional outbursts, and then next time how they can respond to not make it worse, but also to make it so that the child learns something from it,
Yeah,
learns some control. Is
makes
that
sense.
helpful? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's to that whole idea of what you just described as sort of being present in the moment to analyze the situation, right?
Yeah.
That's really hard sometimes.
It is really hard. And then also, when your own emotions get involved, you start feeling like doubting yourself, or you're getting angry or getting frustrated. And again, being able to take a step back and kind of look at what's going on and put it in the perspective of, the child's development over time, where they are in terms of their development. And it's often helpful to compare them to their peers. And that's a good, kind of measure, I guess, of what's
Okay.
what's really dysregulation or a significant problem versus what's expected for a child of that age and setting.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Can you talk a little bit about talking about sort of the importance of helping a child in those early stages and how that can impact them as they grow into becoming a teen and learning to, deal with their emotions in a different, more mature way?
Yeah, well, again, I think that emotional control is part of development, and I think parents just need to again relax, to feel to try to separate their emotions from the child's emotions, and if at all possible, to not make it worse by either letting having their child's emotions trigger them in a negative way, or to display something that I guess to get them off track and out of their role of being a parent, right?
Right. Yep. Yep. That makes sense. So you talk about the importance of that family system. Are there um, ways that parents can really truly impact the child's regulatory skills? Are there certain things that parents should be kind of keeping an eye out for to to help them along?
Yeah. Well, I think what parents should keep an eye out for. Sorry, let me stop. Could you just ask that again? I was thinking about something else.
Okay, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So,
So in terms of family support and how parents are interacting
mm.
with children, are there particular things that parents should be looking out for to be able to intervene and help their kids?
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, I guess I always think about factors in the child, factors in the parent, and factors in the situation. So in the child would be, is my child well fed? Is their nutrition adequate? What is their sleep like? Are they not getting enough sleep or inconsistent sleep?
Mhm.
Um, Medically, is there something else going on with the child? Is there a nutritional imbalance? Is there a acute illness that we don't know? Is the child coming down with the flu, or something more serious? So looking at factors in the child, then looking at factors in the parent. Did the parent have a bad day? Did the parent have up all night? Is there something, stress intolerance, the parent, little things are just upsetting the parent. Um, and then factors in the environment. What's the stress level in the home? Is there financial stress? Is there marital stress? Is there housing stress? Um, so you have to look at all those things, the child, the parent, and the situation, and then figure out what's contributing to um, that particular situation, and then what can be modified to make it more positive, a more positive teaching environment. Not positive, you can't protect children from everything. And many things that are unpleasant are actually learning experiences. I mean, think about the first time learning, for example, to swim, especially if you're fearful of going in the water. Or, learning how to settle yourself when you wake up at night. Um, so with some of those new situations, sometimes there's stress and discomfort, but those can be very positive learning experiences.
Sure.
And parents want to put themselves in the role that they can support their children in achieving mastery in those situations.
And there's so many variables there, right? You just talked about so many different things that can be, impacting to various degrees, right? It's a very dynamic, each individual situation is so dynamic, and there's a lot to be taking in as a parent. Um,
Yes, well, we can make things very complex, but I think just sort of simple, guides to follow are to be relaxed, to try to be positive, and to highlight, especially what your child is doing well, and to kind of monitor progress over time. And to be concerned, though, again, if things get worse, or they're not seeming to develop, and that's when you want to get feedback from other parents or from your healthcare professional.
Sure. Are there uh, when the actual parent is having trouble with dysregulation, are there specific things we should be trying to kind of think about ourselves to kind of calm ourselves in the situation and look at it more clearly?
Yeah, well, again, I think parents are great teachers as models of this. And so monitoring, again, their own stress level and their own health level and their mental health issues, and to address those, because don't put, you have to treat yourself before you can help your child. And if a parent is, let's say clinically depressed, they're going to really have a hard time being engaged with the child and being a positive role model. Or a parent who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is really going to have difficulty providing structure and consistency to their child, which is really extremely helpful. So again, paying attention to their own needs as well as their child's, it's part of being a good parent.
It's a lot of awareness.
Yeah. But not, I don't want to make it sound super complicated or hard. I mean, people have been doing this for more than a few years,
Right.
and it usually turns out well. So
Absolutely. So, can we talk a little bit about intervention strategies and building resilience? Are there types of strategies that have show stronger evidence of helping a child build that resilience?
yeah. Um, well, I think that's a really key question and a key strategy. How do you build resilience? And I think the way to do it, well, the easiest way to do it is to focus on positives and what a child's strengths are, and to build on those strengths. So whenever I'm working with a family, I always ask, what is the child good at? What do they like? Now, I'll hear video games, and that's not something we really need to focus on or build on, but either their personality characteristics or their aptitudes in certain areas. If someone's, really good at math, or they're really good, in terms of sharing or socially or with animals, you want to highlight those strengths, and really focus on those, because that really is a key to self-esteem, is doing something well and getting feedback on it. It's not being told, you know, you're good at everything, or uh, not giving a child an opportunity to struggle with something, but helping them achieve realistic goals is really super helpful. And so a strategy is to build on their strengths. And when you're aware of their weaknesses or getting feedback on their weaknesses, finding out how you can support their learning them. You know,
Okay.
by not, for example, a child that has a problem with reading, you don't want to turn their home into a special ed reading library, a resource room. Um, but you want to make sure that they're getting support for their reading weaknesses, but to balance that with other things,
That's right.
again, to maintain self-esteem. So kind of
That's
looking at the overall picture, building strengths, giving support for weaknesses, and then tracking their performance. And with a heavy dose of catching them when they're good and focusing on that.
okay. So you mentioned video games, which like
Mhm.
I guess all parents these days are have the are familiar with that aspect of the child's the time they spend. Um, there are a lot of other technologies like digital health tools, even like Ori, that
Mhm.
are coming into the mix now. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how technologies are changing this area?
Yeah, well, the exciting thing about technology is that we're getting new information at a fast pace,
Mhm.
and the opportunity for more objective information. And I think that can be helpful, especially for things that are really unclear or subjective, such as emotion regulation or sleep, things that it gives parents a window onto more aspects of their child that normally or previously we would have to infer that were not available. And so it's a great way to access information and to monitor kind of how they're doing in many different domains, not just a few, and not just ones that are either observable or reportable. And one of the things it's important to be able to look at the relationship between different sources of information. What a child tells you, what a parent sees, what other people, what you hear from teachers or friends, and then having objective measures like from a digital device. And then looking at the relationship between them is really an exciting new new frontier, actually, in
Okay.
understanding children and how they develop.
Are there other aspects that, if you look into your crystal ball, what other things are you seeing in the future in terms of technology and how it ties back into this?
Well, the exciting thing is that I think in the future we're going to be able to individualize interventions more. I mean, in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about temperament and individual differences. I think that in the future we're going to have even more precision in terms of identifying where children are and also the processes they go through over time. And
Okay.
then to be able to really say, hey, this is really getting much better, or this is aspect is something that is still a problem or still an outlier and might be something that we're going to work on next.
That's very exciting. Very exciting. Looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
and better
Doc,
games too. No,
right.
yeah.
Sure. Um, so if you had one message to parents to take away from this conversation, what would it be?
Um, I guess it would be um, uh, for parents to really identify where is the joy in parenting and what is the aspect that is in the interaction with your child that is positive for you and for them, and to build on that. And in terms of how can I improve my child's regulation abilities, again, it's giving them feedback and giving them experience in a variety of settings, and seeing that their ability to handle increasingly challenging situations improves as they get older and as they have more experience. And if they just kind of look back, well, what were they like when they were two? And hopefully things are much different and much rosier. So,
They get to see the growth. That's, yeah, that's the
yes.
exciting part of it. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Doctor. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
This has been really helpful. As a parent, I always love hearing you talk about this stuff, so much appreciated.
I enjoyed our conversation. Take care, Monique. Bye-bye.
Okay, so um, were there sorry, any questions that you would like to add to that we didn't cover? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about while we're recording? I could ask you a different question and
Yeah. I guess well, first of all, I feel like I talked a lot and then went quickly.
yes.
Um, so you might have to slow me down a bit. I guess I'm just wondering, I worry about the parent that feels like there's something wrong and they need to fix their child.
Oh,
And
okay.
so maybe I can just say something about that.
Sure. Yeah, let me I'll just ask the question and then you can respond to it.
Well, let me think of what the question would be. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, when do you consider therapy for a child, or what sort of yeah, when do you consider, or what are the warning signs for treatment or therapy?
Okay. So, doctor, what are the warning signs for treatment or therapy?
Yeah. So we talked before about like the terrible twos continued. And again, I think anytime that you see things are not getting better or getting worse, I think that's a good time to seek information and feedback. And a good way to do that is to meet with your child's pediatrician, someone that knows them over time, and to ask them what they think, because they see lots of children and they know your child. Um, I want to say, though, that the most effective interventions for children are those that involve either their parents or their teachers. There are very few treatments that work like in an office. Even though we like the idea of dropping your child off and saying, "Oh, fix my child, make them better," especially for young children like say under 8 or 9. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. There are children that would benefit, but if really the concern is emotion regulation and behavioral outbursts, again, the first thing is to talk to a professional, and then to seek intervention that has been validated and that we know is effective. Usually, talk therapy or play therapy with the child, although the child may enjoy it, doesn't really teach them skills that generalize to other settings. But if you're working with parents or with teachers on in the real world in terms of where the problems occur, that's more likely to be beneficial. But I wouldn't recommend that until, again, they've had a careful evaluation by a professional, and they can guide you in terms of seeking appropriate treatment.
That makes sense. It never occurred to me that like the important role that the pediatrician has just from the historical perspective of watching the child develop over time and seeing what they've been through in the past and being able to kind of have that third party perspective.
There's that, and then there's also just the part about being able to make sure that there isn't anything medically going on that's new
Hmm.
or that's contributing. So that should always be the first step.
Sure. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to. I hope that comes off okay, but I just see all these parents that are really worried, and they're spending all this time and effort and money in things that aren't really helpful.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, it's well, I don't know if it's hard being a parent, but you shouldn't assume that you have to know everything. And that's why we have professionals like your child's primary care physician, whose real job is to help you in that.
Hmm. Well, and just saying start there, I think is a huge help because there are so many different potential options out there to
Right,
help you or may not help you, but you just don't know as a parent, you don't know where to start all the time,
right,
right? And
right.
kind of
Both.
starting with the physician, get, as the foundation of whatever you're gonna do, I think is really helpful just to get started.
Yes. We can maybe have a whole other session about how to choose a pediatrician for your child or a primary care
Ooh.
physician and how important that is.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great idea.
so,
All
yeah.
right, I'll put that on the to-do list.
Okay.
Um,